and return back to the home screen. Then select English. Now everything you see is in English. If you press the back button, your home screen will be in English again. Now let's get back to the System Setup screen. Press the Setup button and select System Setup. For the purposes of this tutorial, let's disable this feature for now. Simply select the second language button and remove the check from the checkbox. Press back to return to the System Setup screen. Now I want to show you how to update your touchscreen. Press the Program Updates button. You will be taken to a firmware screen. Note that there are two ways to get to this screen, and I'll explain the second way in just a little bit. Once you get to this screen, if you have an SD card inserted in the SD reader under the lower left-hand corner of the screen, it will show you that you have a card inserted. Right now, it shows that the card slot is empty. Note that an SD card with the files originally loaded onto your touchscreen was most likely included with your unit and should be located either in a pouch in your manual or in your spare parts kit. If you insert this card, it will give you the option to advance to the next screen. Note that when you insert this card, insert it with the label facing away from you. If you power off your system first and then insert the card with the slider lock on the side of the SD card in the locked position and then power on your touchscreen, you should automatically be taken to this screen. This is very important to remember if you ever update your firmware. Sometimes the screen will almost be unreadable until you update the language file along with the firmware file. So getting back to this update screen could be a little difficult the way we originally did it. If you update the firmware program and then the screen is all messed up, just take the SD card out, make sure that it is in the locked position, insert it back into the touchscreen while the touchscreen is still powered off, and then power the touchscreen back on again. You will be taken to this screen with the option to advance to the update screen. Now let's take a look at how to update these files. Press the next button from this screen. Now before we begin, there are a few points I want to say. First, we don't recommend updating your firmware if your system is working properly. But if there are any updates or improvements that need to be made, you can find these files on our website and you can update your system from this screen. Those files just need to be placed on your SD card. Make sure that these files are not in any folder on the SD card, otherwise your touchscreen will not see them. They need to be in the root folder or the root directory of your SD card. Make sure to follow your instructions that were included with the files you downloaded from our website. Another point I want to make, and this is very important, make sure that if you are ever updating the language files or the firmware file, you update all three of them. In other words, you are updating both language files plus the firmware file. They are made to work together. If you update just one file, the other files may be incompatible with it. This rule applies specifically to the language and the firmware files. It does not apply to the flavor or mix-in files. You don't need to update the language file or the firmware files if you just want to update your mix-in or flavor files. Now from this screen, you will see two columns, plus a button to update the firmware. The first column is the primary language. The second column is a secondary language. In both of these columns, you can update the flavor file, which contains the names of the flavors that we offer. Also, you can update the mix-ins that has many of the commonly used mix-ins that would be used in the mix-in unit. Note that if you do not see a particular one that you would use, contact us and we may be able to provide you with a file that has it in it. The third one down is called the language file. This is a file that contains all the wording you see on the touchscreen. The one at the bottom is the firmware. It doesn't contain any wording, but instead it is a program that operates the touchscreen. To update these files, simply press the button for the file that you want to update. Again, when updating the language or firmware file, you must update all three of these files. You may experience some screen abnormalities when updating these. If it is bad enough that you can't get back to the update screen, just power off the touchscreen and power it back on. If the slider on the SD card is in the locked position, you will be taken directly back to this update screen. Once you've completed updating all 3 of these files, the screen should look just fine. When you're done updating the files, press the Done button. As you can see, you're back in the home screen again.